Hello everybody, I'm Gabriel Dos Santo and this is the first episode of Pro in the Dev Live. Thank you very much for being here, and just so that you know, this is a completely free, completely online initiative that is meant to help game developers everywhere to improve their results by sharing realistic professional knowledge on game development, right? So in this particular starting episode, we'll be covering some of the main pillars for succeeding realistically in independent game development, and more specifically, not only today but in general, in Pro in the Dev Live, we'll be talking how to actually finish games, right? Not only starting them but actually finishing the games. How do you ship those games? How do you make those games good, right? Because it's not only like you liking the game, but actually other people really appreciating, really being touched by the thing that you are developing. How do you have people even caring about your game to start with, right? So when you talk on Twitter or on Facebook, if you are even sending a press release, how do you get people to respond back to you and to be excited about it, right? So how do you get those types of results? And finally, how do you even make money out of this activity, right? So you are putting your time, you're putting your emotions, your efforts, your credibility. How do you actually make this be like a sustainable profession? Why do you think that you have like this awesome game in your head and you get so excited about that game, you want to make that game happen, but the game that you actually have in your computer, like your last build, the thing that you actually have developed so far, is not that good? Have you ever thought, why is that? How does that happen, right? Or another question, why do you think nobody shares your game or nobody cares when you talk about your game? Why do you think like you commit to a given deadline, or you think that maybe in 1 or 2 months your game will be like this and that, and it will be much better than it is right now, but 1 month comes by, 2 months come by, and it's not really much better. It's basically the same thing. So you, even if you envision like the finish line, and as you go over time, it seems like the finish line is also getting farther away. And I know it sucks because we have this message to share to the world, right? We have this game that we love, that we feel so strongly about. We want other people to share that. We want to make other people's lives better with our games. And we have all these great intentions, and we put a lot of efforts, and we dream about it, and we can really get even emotional thinking about this thing that we really love, but we are consistently not getting there. Like, you know it is awful. I understand that, and this is one of the things that motivated me to be here, right? Because there is a way to fix those problems, and it's not what people usually think. It's definitely not magic, as some people would hope, right? So just download this app, or I don't know, sign up to this paid program, or buy these products, and all your problems will be solved. It's not like that at all. It does require hard work that I'm hoping you are willing to take, because if you are not, then game development is not for you. Like, being really blunt and honest here, if you're not willing to work hard, game development, especially as an independent developer, you're making your own games either by yourself or with a small team, honestly not gonna happen. You have to work hard. It's part, hard working is, no, it's not like work smart or work hard. It's, you have to do both. Honestly, you have to do both. Now, if this is important enough for you that you are willing to do all of those things, then yes, it is possible. I've been there. Many of my friends, both like very well-known developers in the industry whose games you have played, they have been there. Some of my students have been there, and many people who you'd never heard of have been there as well, have felt all of those things, and they managed to persevere. And usually it requires like taking this super long path of basically bouncing your head against the wall and learning and improving a little bit, and rinse and repeat that for like years and years and years and years. And at some point you have like this instinct on how to operate effectively, and I'll be getting back to that in a second. But there is also an easier way, right? So at some point, like a few years back, I thought, okay, what if I could travel back in time and talk to my younger self and give him some tips on how he could, at least instead of taking like 10 years to learn this stuff, how can he learn in 1 year if he's really willing to do the work, right? So every week there will be one live lecture. Maybe it will be like fully live, maybe it will be like this one, which is actually recorded and then uploaded. And I do that for logistical reasons. Sometimes I will choose to do this in this format, sometimes it will actually be live, which I also really like. But regardless of the format, they will always like be packed with battlefield knowledge, right? So it's not me speculating on what I think works. It's not speculation. It's not fan theory. It's all principles, right? It's all solid marketing principles that work not only for games but for any product. And I have an education in marketing, by the way. It's about project management. It's about the strong principles behind every successful operation in game development, either big or small, right? So this is real battlefield knowledge that comes only from actually being there and doing the thing. This is the kind of stuff that when you go to GDC and have lunch with other successful developers who are either in the front stage or in the backstage, but you are talking to them, and this is how you get access to this sort of information usually. And I want this to be more democratic, regardless of where you are in the world, regardless if you are like a veteran like us or if you're just starting out, or maybe you are hitting your head against the wall for a while, but now you want to start getting results. I want everyone to have a good shot at this, right? This is what Pro in Dev is all about, and this is what we'll be covering here. And I don't think there's any way really for you to get access to this sort of information instead of being here. So stick here, pay attention, grab a pencil or a virtual pencil, if you will, but take notes, and I'll be moving to my whiteboard in a second. But besides the live lectures, what else will be there? There will be one-on-one Q&A on social media, and that's a huge undertaking. So that means basically you can get to social media. If you find my profile, I'll share that in a second, but if you find the profile for Pro in the Dev and you send me a direct message initially on Instagram, I will answer everyone. So if you have any doubts regarding your game, regarding professional game development, can just direct message me, and I'll answer you, right? So as long as it's possible, of course. I already have like a few thousands of people relying on my field knowledge to help them. Right now, it's still feasible. I work like about 1 day a week at Pro in Dev. The rest of the time I spend managing my game development studio. But whatever I can cram into that one super productive day in terms of answering questions, in terms of helping people, I will, right? So if you have a doubt, make sure to go there, follow on social media, and just ask, and I will do my best to answer as long as it's possible, humanly, with the time that I have, right? There will also be an email reminder every week so that you don't miss the classes. And there's an introductory class that initially, this one is the first of that track, right? So the idea is that there will probably be about 3 lectures that will always be available on YouTube, and you can take them at any moment. I might replace those lectures as I improve upon them over time, but right now you should watch like lectures 1, 2, and 3, and over time I might change that. And I have actually created a short guide to help you. So this is prointhedev.com/guide. This is placeholder text. Maybe I will iterate on it, maybe not. It's not super important. What matters here is that there is an explanation on how this thing will work, right? In case you need some refresh. And here the most important thing is you have all the links, right? So if you want to follow, I highly recommend that you follow, because I'm not even sure yet how I'll be using those media, except that here you can like have your questions answered. I will not be like promoting individually each of the addresses here. Just follow everywhere is my recommendation. See what kind of stuff Pro in the Dev will be producing through me basically. And if you want, you can unfollow later. But here are all the buttons that you need, and here are the starter track lecture, right? So after I record this, I'll be putting this one here, this one that you're seeing right now, and this will not be available immediately. So this is just placeholder, just so that you know. If you want to make sure that you have watched everything, you can just come here, watch these 3 videos, and make sure to follow on the different places. And most important, come here to at the end of the page, there's this form where you can sign up for the weekly reminder, right? So every week before this thing goes live, I'll just be sending the link, right? So that you can know where to access the lectures, right? So just put here, When it's an actual live lecture, you actually even have the opportunity to be there with me. I always keep the chat on, and we answering the chat and doing some Q&A at the end, like a live Q&A at the end with the group that's watching live. I used to do that quite a bit. I really like this format, so make sure to come here because it's like the best way to learn, right? And it's also a way to make sure that you are not losing some of the lectures. And one of the reasons I'm saying that is because even though this thing is called Pro in the Dev Live, not every lecture will actually be delivered live, like this one. But I want the whole Pro in the Dev community to be talking about the same things, right, every week. So apart from the introductory track, most of the classes, I believe, I'm not sure yet, but most of the classes I will probably keep online for just 1 week. And then when the next lecture comes live, I will just remove the previous one, right? So the number 1, 2, and 3 will be there, or their equivalent lessons will be there, but the other ones will always be only like that week's lecture. So if you want to make sure you don't miss anyone, just sign up here and you'll get notified. Also, a little bit of credits here. It's important, right, to acknowledge people who have helped you. So this dude, Pedro Sobral, is a Brazilian marketer, I think you can call him. He invented this format of live lectures every week, and he has been a big inspiration for me. Unfortunately, if you don't speak Brazilian Portuguese, I don't think you'll be able to take benefit. But he helps people with paid acquisition campaigns on Facebook. It's very specific, very technical, maybe meant mostly for marketers, but he is the one who invented this format, so I'm following it. I think it's really, really good. Just wanted to give the due credits, right? And as you can imagine, finally, putting this to work will be like huge amounts of effort. You know, the way that you can help is basically sharing it, because this is an experiment. If I notice that enough people are taking benefit from this, then I'll make sure to go there and keep recording these lectures or keep going live. But if I find myself unable to do that, then I will unfortunately have to stop it. So if you want this to continue, I'm counting on your generosity to go there and share this link. Maybe share this link. It's super easy, right? So prointhedev.com/guide. Just refer people here or refer people to the YouTube channel and recommend the class. You know, write a short post on Instagram, on Twitter, whatever it is, share the link. This is how this thing will grow, right? So I'm not putting any significant budget in marketing here. I just want this to grow mostly organic, and that means you, right? Really you who are watching this right now. If you want this initiative to keep existing, then please go there, share, invite some friends if you think this will be helpful to some people in some groups that you know. Just go there and invite people, and this will be like a huge way to say thank you to me to put in the time to make this thing happen. All right, so we will be talking about how to succeed realistically in independent game development. And I think the big question that you definitely should be asking, especially if you have not been following Pro in the Dev before, is who am I to talk about that, right? And some people look at me and say, but you have this huge privilege because you walk with like the greatest in the industry. Like you have worked in the backstage of several initiatives, organizing things, and you know everybody, you're super well connected. You have like these people helping you make your games. And obviously, I don't know, it should be obvious, but to some people it just isn't. But I have started from nothing as well, right? Just, you know, I need to be super clear about that. I haven't started with any of those resources at all, right? And in fact, I have found proof of that. I have been making games for 26 years now, and I found a picture that serves as proof. So let me see if I can pull that quickly. So here is me when I started making games. I was like 10 years old, and you can see I was a very mature individual. And probably you can see over here, this is probably QBasic open here. So I would go on vacation to my older brother's house. He was learning how to code and he taught me, and I started making games back then. And a couple of years, maybe I think I did a bit less than that, maybe one and a half year later, I finished my first game. And you can see the face of the developer here and see it was probably not a very good game, And here I have the credit screen for that first game, right? So I don't want you to necessarily pause and read this, but I am actually thanking a lot of people for this huge game, this huge undertaking that was making this stupid little game, right? And I also consider myself to be the true master of the computation arts, right? So if you think it's stupid, just remember it was this dude who made it. But the important thing was that I actually finished that, I actually shipped that on the internet. Some real people played, uh, has given feedback, and it was super cool, right? Then, skip ahead many years. In 2008, I founded a studio called Pixel Cows, have made over 20 games. That includes B2C stuff, B2B stuff, work as a mentor, as a consultant, as a teacher. Have finished a bunch of projects, have made, sales, have, I've been everywhere. I know a lot of people in the industry. I have been very active since then. And as of uh, 2013, I have been living off exclusively of my work at the games industry, right? So, but because I've been in the backstage of professional independent game development for such a long time, I have the opportunity to know a lot of people in the industry, right? And I realize that that's, most of the professional knowledge that really matters tends to stay in the circle. And that's why, as I mentioned, I founded ProIndieDev and started with the first global conference on professional indie game development, a pretty big name, but I think it was a pretty big cause. And when I did that, people just said to me, okay, that's awesome, but I need something that's more like step by step. What should I do now? How can I get started, making progress right now? And I want to start using this thing. Who am I to help you? Anyways, right? So I want to be very straightforward, very clear with answering that. So let me just make sure this is readable, this is good to use. So as I mentioned, I started making games in 1994, 1993, I believe, probably. So started making games. In 2000 something, 2002, actually, I started an education in marketing and advertising. And one of the reasons why I did that is because, as you may or may not know, but I'm from Brazil. And back then, there was no games industry in Brazil. I didn't have any hope of working with that professionally. People convinced me to take a real, to get a real profession. And so I got an education in marketing. In 2005, I joined IBM and worked for almost 8 years as a project manager. Basically, I ran teams that developed software. It's pretty much equivalent as a game producer. I'm telling that because I know many people watching will be more familiar with the term producer than project manager. Usually a producer is someone who knows a little bit less about like professional project management, like the techniques, like Scrum, like waterfall, all that nice stuff, and know more about the subject matter. But it's very similar. It depends. It is even used interchangeably depending on the company. But it's very similar to that, right? So I worked as a project manager for a while. And in 2008, by the very end of 2008, I founded Pixel Cows, which is my game development studio. I didn't work very seriously on that because I was still working at IBM until 2013. And in 2013, I went full time, right? So this is one period of Pixel Cows, then a second period of Pixel Cows. And basically by then, like 2013, I have already been making games for what, like 20 years, even, and I never stopped working as a hobbyist. And then in 2008 started more seriously attempting, following this indie dream thing in parallel, like part-time. So when I got in 2013, I said, okay, I have a lot of experience, maybe I have all it takes. So I just went full-time, and I knew I had what it takes. So what happened was that I started working full time, and I almost got bankrupt. You know, I wish my story was one of those easy wins where, the hero finds the sword and kills the dragon and he's successful. Alas, that is not my case. It's usually not what happens in real life. That's definitely not what happened to me. So what happened is that I basically uh, went through all my IBM money. So I was very successful in my IBM career. I did get a pretty good amount of money, and I was saving so that I could go full time with my indie adventure. And what happened is that I committed to a project that, looking nowadays, it's obvious for me that I would never be able to finish. But back then, I was so sure I had all it took, right? And then I spent my money. I thought I would have to go back to IBM, which I really dreaded back then. I loved my time at IBM. I would have nothing against working with, any big company. But back then, that meant, and this was part of the problem. But back then, it meant failure for me, right? So I didn't want to go back. I wanted to try and be successful at game development, right? So I was lucky to find some hidden money. It's not even hidden. It's just I was not super organized back then, and I had like this pension fund that was automatic, and I had some more money that basically IBM automatically would put there every month for all the 8 years where I was working there. It was not like enough for me to work for a full year, but it gave me like a few months of leeway. And so I said, okay, you know what? Let's start approaching this thing professionally. And I realized that, you know, I've been like watching Indie Game the movie and being driven by this dream, right? And I have been reading advice, every piece of advice I could find on the internet. I was not capable of filtering that. So someone said, okay, try, go nuts on Twitter. Other people said, don't use Twitter because it's useless. Share screenshots. Don't share screenshots. If it was nowadays, people would be saying, okay, have a Discord, have an email list, have wish lists for your game, and you get crazy trying to do everything, especially when there's so much contradictory advice. And I said, you know what? I have been trying to do that and it's just not working. So let's stop for a minute. Let's take a step back and think. You have a degree in marketing and advertising. You know the principles that make these things work, not what some random people are theorizing on the internet. You know the principles. You have a degree in that, for God's sake, right? You have been a professional product developer for several years. And in game development specifically, you have even more time because you've been doing that since you were a kid. And, you know, a lot of people in the industry because back then I already have been participating in stuff to help other developers to organize like expos or to participate in an aspect of that, showcases. And so I knew a lot of people. And I was like, okay, what if I use my knowledge, I use my background to start looking at what people actually do, especially people who are succeeding. What are they doing? Not what they say they do. Because as I briefly mentioned before, sometimes when you are really good at something, you just do the right things without even realizing what you're doing. So if someone asks like a super talented, I don't know, singer, how can someone sing that well? He'll just answer, I don't know, sing from your heart. And that's because the real techniques, they are so internalized to that person that he doesn't even know he's doing that, right? So the same happens with advice from talented game developers many times. If they're not analytical to the point of really figuring out which are the reasons for their success, they're often unable to point that out. So you just do what they say, you are not doing what they're doing. And so you're not getting the same results, right? So just a sip of water. So this was like the big leap for me, the big insight. And when I started applying that, things started working. So I don't know, maybe about that time I realized that people didn't have a formal understanding of what they did that made it work for them. Let's be even more specific. Like successful developers, right? So they didn't know what was working for them, so I had to use my own background and brain to figure the patterns. And that's when things started changing for me finally, right? And I had been, just do the math, I had been on the road for several years as pixel cows back then, right? When it was like a serious attempt of making this thing work. So good things started happening, and I'm talking about all the bad stuff here. I want to also celebrate the good stuff. Okay, so let me show a couple of those things. But basically, as I browsed to find it, I learned to plan games correctly. I learned to scope properly. I learned to understand what was valuable to to players, not only to me as a developer, not only what I wanted to develop, and I managed to start finishing games, right? Making money with games, right? So one of the things that I really enjoyed from that time was that I started participating in game jams with my business partner, and we started consistently like finishing games. Some of those games pretty good. So this is one of the games that we developed in maybe 3 days. It's called Let's Dive, and people reported crying at the end of this game. Like it was something we developed in 3 days. And just a few months before, we were questioning if we were even capable of making good games. And now we had people like saying, okay, this is the best game I have played in months, and I'm comparing you guys to AAA. And this was a game that we developed in like 3 days, right? So this was, I'm not trying to brag here. I'm just saying that a good changing mindset can actually produce incredible results, right? So this was Let's Dive, and this was not like the only game that had this sort of results. Actually, we participated in a bunch of like competitions, game jams, this joint efforts to develop games that had some sort of competitive angle, and we consistently were in the top 1% because we started applying those principles to make a good game, to finish that game, to deliver the full scope of something feasible that we conceived to delight the player. And turns out it works. Turns out players were delighted. So it was like super cool. We got the opportunity, we started having the opportunity to go like to events. This is me without a bird, a beard, not a bird, a beard, and my business partner as well. This is super difficult to find nowadays, but yeah, back then we didn't have. And this was one of the few moments that we had in this whole, I think it was a 5 days expo that we participated in a different city. We were invited, and one of the few moments where it was not completely packed with people. I think because it was like lunchtime or breakfast time or something, so it was a little bit more empty. But you know, we were there and we were showing our game, and among others of like dozens of other talented developers who were also like showing their games. And our booth, it had people in front, lining up in front of it all the time to play our game, right? And it was like one of like a major success for us. It was unthinkable. Like 1 year before, we were like in our rooms, like dark and you know uh unshaved, looking really bad, and I'm not going to say depressed necessarily, but really afraid if this thing was for us. And after changing some parameters, it started working actually. And I'm simplifying the story here because I don't want to get into too much details, but this happened over a period of time, right? So this is one of the earlier successes that we had, and it was like super cool. Also, I had the opportunity to become friends with some of my heroes. So this guy, and it's funny here because now I've been talking to Ron Carmel, this guy on the right, for so long that it's just Ron for me. But back then, it was like unachievable to be talking to people that I admire that much. So this is the guy one of the two guys who created World of Goo, one of those first like 3 or 4 hugely successful indie games in 2008 to 2012, one of those few games that actually inspired the whole indie scene to even exist. And Ron is also one of the founders of the Indie Fund. They had supported a bunch of independent games over the years. And basically I was just hanging out with these people. There's another cool photo here. Cool photo here. Am I pronouncing this correctly? Cool photo here. of me. And Tommy Refn is one of the creators of Super Meat Boy, and James Stone, who was one of the speakers at the Pro Indie Dev conference. Big friend, super talented guy who is now working at Unity. And all of this was unthinkable for me, right? So I started getting results. And I think what's more important uh, than any of these specific things is I found my place in the industry. So I started making money. I started being able to call this a profession. I started having results. I started having my games finished and appreciated by people. And I think more than any of these results or cool stuff that you get to have when you are making it, I think just finding my place and knowing that I belonged there and I was, I deserved my seat at the game industry and I was capable of producing stuff that had value to people. That was worth, more than anything for me. And I already mentioned that, it's not, even though there are patterns that you should be following that I'll be talking about in a second, but there's no trick, no magic, no, it's basically just understanding the principles. If you want to be successful at anything, okay, so this is important. How to be successful at anything. This should be worth your time, even if you have to stay for the whole class just to learn this one bit of advice. Easy steps to be successful at anything in life. One, figure out what you want to be successful at, right? So in this case, I'm understanding it's game development, but even figuring out what success looks like for you, it's an important piece of that. Am I sharing my screen, by the way? Yes, I am. Nice. Okay. So, second, understand the principles that regulate success at that. Then, find leverages to work aligned with those principles. So, what is a leverage? A leverage is like, people who've been following Pro Indie Dev will know this. You put X effort. This is a regular thing. You put X effort, you get X results. Leverage, a high leverage thing, you put X effort and you get 10X results. So identify what are the leverages, right? In development, in marketing, in promotion, in scoping, in building and shipping, and all of those things, in finding partnerships. Find the leverages that will allow you to work aligned with those principles that regulate success in the thing that you want to be successful at, and then execute, execute, execute. That's it. That's it. Just have the perseverance, have the guts of putting your time and doing that thing consistently. Consistently. Keep doing, keep doing, keep doing. And this is how you accumulate the progress. Like you make progress in the progress bar to achieve the next milestone in this thing that's important to you, right? So when I'm saying it's based in principles, it's not like magic. It's because it requires hard work, right? It requires brains. You need to think about those things. It requires peace of mind to go in there and just thinking about what you want to achieve, right? And I'm trying to offer you here like a shortcut for that because I will be showing several of those principles today and in basically all the other lessons that I'll be giving. But you can find shortcuts, you can find ways to do things more efficiently, but you need to put the work and you need to act according to principles that regulate success, right? So this is how because it's aligned with principles, this is how this is not something that will work, only for the person who is talking about it. So let me show you one quick example of someone else actually achieving this sort of thing by applying the right results or the right principles. So it's called Before. This is a game by one of my students and long time student, long time follower, long time fan, Sam Bearham. He's a game developer, independent game developer from New Zealand. So like 2 or 3 years ago, this guy was working a full-time job that he was not super fond of, and he wanted to make a living off games, but he needed to basically pay for his living, so he had to work on that job. But he dreamt of making games as a full-time profession, actually as a business. And when he approached me and started learning from me, he was like, okay, I don't know what to do. I have only, I don't have experience with game development. I'm a programmer, but I don't have like specific experience with game development. How can I do that? How can I make that work? And I worked with him first in some mentoring sessions. Not going to sell that to you because I don't even have time to give one-on-one mentoring. It takes a lot of time, and it would be so expensive to most people that I don't even offer that anymore. But back then I did. I had an agreement with him where he helped me with some stuff, and I helped him with that. Started advising. Then I started like my advanced training, which is called FGGS, and he got into that as soon as he could, and he started applying. And what happened was that very, very quickly, Sam, let me see if there's a picture of him somewhere. I don't know if I'll be able to find that or not. But very quickly, Sam got funded. So he started applying these marketing principles, development principles, to elaborate like a draft on a pitch. He pitched that to some potential investors in a game event. He got fully funded to work full time on his game. He worked on his game for like 1 to 2 years. We spoke a little bit during that time, and he was following this framework that I'm going to teach. And he managed to launch his game through a partnership with Epic, right? So it was one of the games that they highlighted. And this game was successful enough for Sam's wife to quit her job and start working full time with him, right? So right now he's expanding his team. He's getting more people into this like mentoring thing that I have. Once again, it's not open right now. I'm sorry. But because he already was there, he just wanted to have more people getting the training. So I allowed him an exception because I know him for a long time, and he's expanding now, right? And this is just by applying principles, right? So once again, it's not magic, and you should be grateful for this not being magic, because if I was saying there was a magic solution, I would be lying, right? And there's people doing that, by the way. There's no fucking magic at all. It's identify the principles, work on those principles in a smart way with consistency, and that's it. If you find yourself like the principles that regulate success in anything, you don't even have to watch these classes really. But this is really what it is. Now, if you do stay with me, I will cut some years off of your learning curve, because I have already identified that, already have helped other people achieve great things by applying those principles. Key differences between amateurs, hopeful amateurs, and professionals. There's people saying it's not possible to succeed in indie development anymore. It's too crowded. It's too many people making games, or whatever excuse there is. But when you go see how they are approaching the markets, it's a total amateur way. So no wonder they will not find their places, right? You need to be professional if you want to have a good shot at this. And I'm going to highlight some of the main things here, right? So what is a professional game developer? And you can put like an indie game developer if you want to talk specifically about like one individual or the owner of the company that happens to be really small. But what is a professional? And I think a good way to define that would be, you are deliberately damn deliberately, okay, that's how you write it, deliberately aiming for specific good results, right? You are not only working on a whim on the things that you want to work, you're not doing the things that you want to be doing right now, but you are thinking on the results that you want, right? So what is good for the player? not you. What will help your game draw attention? You need to think about that. You need to be embedding those characteristics in your game. Uh, how will you promote? And you cannot say, I'll figure that out later. You need to figure that out now because it's part of the plan, right? If you don't find a good answer to that right now, you are in serious trouble. And you could as well just save you a couple years of your life by not investing time on something that you don't know how you will promote. Because at the end of the day, if you're trying, unless you are only developing it because you want, right? Then that's absolutely fine. If you are doing this as a hobbyist, or you just like putting out freeware, it's okay, it's fine. I have done that. It's completely okay. Now, if you need to make money, you need to be deliberate. That's, I think, the main thing. How will you promote? How will you stay in the game, right? So how we will pay for your time to keep developing games? How we will improve? How we will improve your position in the game, right? In the industry, how you hire more people to help you, how we recognize it, how you start being offered partnerships. Professionals, they tackle game development as a profession. That's, it sounds simple, but really it is what it is. Uh, they are deliberate, right? They want to have a specific result and they try to engineer a path to get there. And that result is not a dream that's completely unfounded. It's realistic. Not saying you have to dream small. You can dream big, but you need to have a good, realistic plan to get there. Sometimes it's made of different steps, right? And I'll be talking about that very, very soon, right? But this is, I think, a very broad, very quick definition in terms of what you have to do. And if I was to define, in terms of results, you know what? Let me do this in a different way, because I actually do have something to help you understand this. So in order to do that, let me see if I have uh, my notes here to help me with that. Okay, so this is let's see, how do I do a table here? I think a 2x2 table. If I want, I can add rows later. Okay. So actually, be patient with me, guys. I'm trying to do this live. I could as well not be doing it, so do not complain, okay? So this is the table. All right, so this is how people will tend to approach game development. So they make the game they want to make. They do their very best to make it perfect. They believe in perseverance. And let me know, maybe in the comments, maybe in your own heads, maybe mark me on Instagram, like tag me and tell me uh, if you can see yourself in those things, right? So you want to make that game, you want to make it really good, you want to persevere. You do get scared about the marketing bit. I know this is a big one for people. So they know they will have to sell it at some point, but they don't know how. But they get scared about it. They hope someone will discover them, right? They believe that a great game. This is one that's really cool. Great game is the fruit of a great design. They believe in that. And more for a lack of option than anything else, they feel like it's an all or nothing game. All or nothing game for them, because if they fail, then how will they keep doing this thing, right? So this is complicated, and so this is all or nothing for them. That can be like super, super scary, right? And what they want to achieve with that, so let me see if I can start. I can add. how can I do this? Insert a row above, right? So this is the method, and this is the results they want. What do they want? They want to make games that people love. So they want to be recognized for that, right? They want to be productive and actually launch the game. They want to reach a large audience with that beautiful game that they're making, and it's completely understandable. They want to be sustainable from their games. They want to be recognized for their work. Oops. I'm really good at typing fast, as you can see. And, they want to have the opportunity, yeah, thank you, to work with the best. Like, be working with their heroes, they want to have this sort of result, right? So that's why they're putting all this effort here, because they want these results. But what ends up happening is that nothing happens at all like this. So I'll even paste this here for the time being, because what they actually get is very, very different, right? It's more like actual quality is never what they had in mind, right? So we're trying to make the perfect game, but the game is actually, you know that in the bottom of your heart, you know that your game is not really good right now. Not the one that you have in your computer. Maybe the one that's in your head is awesome, but the one that you actually have is not really good. Also, very classic symptom of a problem is the moving finish line, which I already mentioned. It will be almost finished in 3 months from now, or it will be much better, or maybe even almost finished in 3 months from now. Now the thing is, you are always thinking like that, always. So those 3 months, they are moving, right? In 3 months from now, you keep thinking that the game will be almost ready and really good in 3 months, but actually the thing that you actually have is never really there, right? Another one that's really sad: anxiety or fear of nobody caring, right? So they are not sure if the game is good enough. They realize that at the bottom of their hearts, and so this leading to perfectionism and scope creep. And so this kind of feeds into the game never being finished, because you know it's not super good. You think you need to put more stuff, you need to polish more. You don't know exactly what to do, so keep putting time and time and time. And at some point, the project gets so big that if you flop, you're done, right? Because you invest in everything. It's all or nothing, right? It's all or nothing, right? So this is the result that you end up getting. And I realize how frustrating that can be, right? So let me add another row below here. So what you want is professional results. Let me add here, column to the left. But you are actually like a hobbyist, right? So let me see if I can format this a little bit better. You are acting like a hobbyist, but you want to get the professional results, right? So this disconnect can be extremely frustrating, right? Because you are actually putting the effort. I know that doing these things, it takes time, it takes dedication, it takes intelligence. Making games is difficult. Just doing this thing is already super difficult, right? Don't feel it's not your fault that you're not getting those results. It's just that nobody has told you how to do this properly, right? And it took me a long, long time to figure that out by myself, by watching other people and having the opportunity to be with other people after years of failure and frustration, right? So it's okay. If this is you, don't feel bad. It's fine. It happens to the best of us. It's not a problem, really. But you need to understand the disconnect here, and you need to start taking steps towards changing it, right? So what professionals do to get those results? they try to understand customers, right? So it's not necessarily the game that they want to make, but the game that the customers want to play, right? So there's a big difference there. And you start realizing, you start noticing some patterns here. Good scoping plus smart decision making, right? So not trying to make it perfect, but defining what is an intelligent scope that will result in a game that's perceived as perfect or as almost perfect, right? But it's more about scoping properly and then making smart decisions throughout the process than trying to create exactly the vision that you have in your head. There's a big difference. We'll be getting into more details, if not today, in one of the next classes. Another big one, engineered attraction and outreach, right? So it's not hoping that someone will care about your game, hoping that someone will promote it for you. It's actually engineering for that to happen, right? And outreach as well. So how do you actually go there and promote it? Constantly improving your craft, just practicing, just doing things, maybe finishing games that were not meant to be sold. But if you cannot put the time to do that, you'll not ever gain the experience to gain some levels and get better and get the results that you want. So practicing is part of that. Being here is part of that. Paying attention is part of that. Staying to the fucking end of this lesson is part of that. I already told you, and there's no shortcut in that. At least you need to do the work. You need to do the work, and being here is part of the work as well, right? So guiding how you approach your work in improving your craft is part of that as well. You need to be deliberate about that. Also, you understand that a good game is the fruit of a great process, not a great design, a great process. A great process includes a good design that is kind of a guiding star towards which you are heading throughout your entire development. It helps you stay focused, it helps you understand what's valuable to players, what they will appreciate, but will also give you the flexibility to adapt and adjust to the discoveries that you naturally have as you are in the battlefield developing your game, right? So a system might work really well on paper, but when you implement it, it's just not working, and it's stupid to keep insisting. Just take a step back, revise your design a little bit, because it's an organic thing that evolves with the game, right? The game designer is someone to be on board throughout the development. It's not like you creating this monolithic paper that's only for you to feel good about inventing a game and then trying to follow that blindly. You need to be humble. You need to be humble that no plan survives the battlefield. No plan survives the battlefield. And that's exactly the same with game design and game design documents. You can have a broad vision, but you need to have the flexibility to adapt the plan as you go there and try to start implementing and start seeing the actual results of that design apply to your game, right? So understand that this is the fruit of a process. And also having a vision for career and long term, right? So I'll even leave this here while I take another sip of my water, because I want to revise this. Okay, so this is basically my definition of professional game development. You are not working as a hobbyist and expecting the results of a professional, right? You are either a hobbyist and you are fine with, you don't even need to get those results specifically, but you're fine with not finishing, you're fine with making a game that's good for you, not for the player. You're fine with working on the things that you feel like working, even if it's not what will make the game better for the player that is supposed to give money. You don't even have to think about that. If your definition of success is being happy while you develop your games, then just developing your games and being happy about it is already success. You don't even need to be here, right? Now, if you have specific professional results in mind, that's what this is about. Pro indie dev, professional independent game development, right? So it's all about how you define success, right? So let's get to the part where we talk about I think it's 7. I will count this. to realistic indie game development success. The 7 pillars to realistic indie game development success. And I'll count it to make sure it's 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'll try to move quickly here. Okay, so first thing is, number 1, stop thinking of success as a Boolean. I already gave that one before, right? So what is that? It's people who think like, okay, I want to be Edmund Macmillan, right? I want to be the guy who created Super Meat Boy and The Binding of Isaac and all those other successful games who made millions of dollars. And I'll try to go straight to the win, right? So the only option that I have right now is working so that I become the next Edmund Macmillan. So this is a Boolean, right? Either you are Edmund Macmillan or you are a failure. And the problem with that is that there's actually a staircase in there, right? You need to be taking steps towards that. And if you cannot see, if you're only looking at the goal at the end of the road, you're not looking at what's right in front of you. What you have to fix now. What's your next thing to improve, right? So this is the first thing, right? And I do have another picture to use as an example. This is from my Twitter, actually from Klipsky's Twitter. So Klipsky, you might know him, he's the creator of very successful games like Democracy, Production Line, more recently, Gratuitous Space Battles. Actually, the last game he launched was Democracy 4. Absolutely fantastic games, absolutely fantastic guy. And, you know, he took this photo casually. He's not in the photo because he was taking it at GDC 2018 as we were on the line at Starbucks. And I found it really interesting because, you know, we were there and, you know, talking about, you know, how we approached our games, what were we doing, which design things were interesting to us, which marketing techniques we were using that were being more successful and all that, right? And then he just took that picture as we were in the line. And after I looked at this picture when he posted it on Twitter, I was like, this is interesting because this is such a broad range of types of success and shapes of success, right? So these are all people, including myself, who were at GDC, who were, you know, talking to professionals, who were having the opportunity to network on the highest level, who were there because of their work. And yet, maybe you will not know these people at all, right? So maybe you know me because I'm very active with indies, like helping people in a more public space for the past few years, organizing events and whatnot, but maybe you don't, right? But I've been making games and living off of that thing, you know, for several years now, doing B2B stuff, doing work for, you know, everyone, basically from universities to museums to advertising agencies to B2C stuff. And, you know, I don't have a game on Steam as I'm recording this. I'm working on that in my studio, but we are, you know, too concerned with, you know, keep making money from the things that we do well to be concerned about looking like Edmund Macmillan or not. And by the way, when I say that, I say this with the utmost respect for Edmund Macmillan, who is actually a friend and who will be showing a clip from my conversation with him from a couple of years ago where we discuss exactly that, right? But this is a very different way of having success. Jake Burkett, you know, very popular guy on the internet for sharing numbers and crunching numbers on sales and indie success in general, right here besides me. And he stayed away from like Steam forever. Then he launched like past 2 games on Steam or 3 maybe, but he was like making a very good living, very sustainably, only by making games for casual browser portals and very specific games at that. So basically card games and match 3 types of games. And those are pretty cool games, by the way, right? But this is very niche, and yet here he is at GDC, you know, having a coffee with some of the best in the field because, you know, as a result of his work, right? As a result of his work. So start having a more mature understanding of the shapes, the possibilities of what success can look like, and start aiming for that. This guy over here, to my knowledge, he never earned $1 like from Steam or consoles, and yet he's been living of his game development for a long time, and he has made with one of the games that I think are the most admired ever. Is one of the games that are considered an asset for humanity. It's actually in museums nowadays. He is Tarn Adams. He's the developer of Dwarf Fortress, one of the developers, one of the brothers who actively work on Dwarf Fortress. He's made a pretty good living, uh, basically on donations. You don't have to pay for the game. You just go to their website to download it for free, and if you want to donate money to him, you can. And he's been living off of that. And it's impossible to say this is a not successful developer. And even Klifsky, who has promoted so strongly, direct sales, which sometimes results in you not being so well known, and yet making lots of money and advising people forever. He was actually a successful indie developer since before the word indie developer was popular back in 2008, because he's making games for so much longer than that, right? So understand different shapes of success. Also, you can have different objectives, right? Yes, you can try to get rich. It will take some time, some effort, some luck, but it's possible. But it's not the only thing. And I want you to think deliberately about what you want, right? So be admired. Tarn Adams, super admired. Having a studio, not necessarily everyone wants that. Some people want to run a studio and have employees. Making your game dev your main profession. Many people are at that stage where they are just working on something else and working by night on his games or their games, and just moving to that point is already some important, significant type of success, right? Maybe just having launched a game at all, just having a launched game and selling it, maybe that's just what you need, right? Maybe it's like spending 2 hours a day every day working on your game. Maybe that's a more realistic next step for you, right? Depending on where you are, who you are, where you are in this road. But this is a viable, this is success. This is success. And what makes this success is you defining that this is a goal and then achieving it. This is what makes this being success. So let me even put it here. What is success? You defining a goal and reaching it. It's simple as that, right? So you can define other goals that make more sense for you immediately, and I'll be talking in details about that. But there's no, I'll even put it bigger here, no correct answer, right? But you have to figure out what makes sense for you. Okay, so this is super important. Stop thinking of success as a boolean. Let me see if I can format this just a little bit better. Let's do it like this. And I don't know how I will be sharing access to this document. If you want to have access to it later, probably on Instagram. So once again, if you haven't, go to prointhedev.com/guide and scroll over here. You will find the links to social media. I'm not sure which one I'm going to use. So, once again, just come here, follow everywhere, and see what I'm posting, because I don't know what I'll be posting right now as I'm recording this, and you decide if you want to keep following or not. But just, to make it easier, just make sure you have access to it. Probably I'll be sharing the notes on Instagram, but I'll see about that, okay? But I'm trying to keep this formatted because I want people to be able to check on this later, okay? Number 2, have a realistic, this takes courage, guys. Have a realistic understanding of where you are right now, okay? So have the courage of looking at yourself, look yourself in the mirror, figure out what you're good at, what you're not, what is realistic for you to expect right now, and I've tried to prepare I think it will work. So I tried to prepare a small clip of my conversation with Edmund Macmillan that will talk a little bit about that. Okay, so let me see if this will work.
And I was in Indie Game the Movie, which is a lot of people know me from visually from that. And I probably made close to 28 Flash games, a few of which were pretty popular in the late 2000s, mid to late 2000s. And I've been doing this for, like, technically, I guess I've been making games for about 18 years. Seems like a long time now.
Has this ever happened to you? Someone coming to you and saying, "Hey, Super Meat Boy is great. I mean, it's so you are so lucky to be so successful in your first game."
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I hear a lot of like people that assume that was it. It's funny too because even in the movie, like, it's most people will see the movie and they'll be like, "Ah, oh, your first game did so well," and it was like, wait, that movie actually did talk about the games that I made before. But it's hard to not, like, I mean, that's kind of the success story that a lot of people pitch. Like, you never talk about the failures, you never talk about all the work that went in and all the sacrifice. You just go right to the win, because that's what everybody wants to see. And no one talks about all the bits and pieces that actually matter, like the building blocks to kind of get you there. Everybody has a history, unless you're a complete lucky wild card that just falls out of the sky with your first game. That there's no way that there's probably a bunch of people around you that also had a lot of experience helping you kind of get there. If you just appeared, it just doesn't happen. Like, everybody has a history, and it kind of sucks that there's this illusion of how success works and how people just fall out of the sky. But yeah, I'm definitely, I wish I was luckier.
That could have happened like 30 games before, right?
For 9 years of my career, I spent.
And that's it. That's the clip that I wanted to show. This is a great interview. Unfortunately, it's not available publicly right now. But I don't know. Maybe I'll make that public at some point. It was exclusive for backers of the Pro Indie Dev conference that we had back in 2018. But yeah, so I just wanted to show Edmund because first, he's such a great guy, right? But also because it's cool to see him talking about this, because he's like the personification of the vision for success that so many people have, like just dreaming of having that level of success, like the Binding of Isaac or Super Meat Boy or some of his other stuff. And he says it very clearly. Everybody has a history, right? When you see someone, when you see someone launching a game that you never heard of before, like of that person, and succeeding, think about that. Usually, that person has gone through a path of growing consistently. Achieving the next thing, then the next thing, then the next thing, right? And by the way, some people have had trajectories in their profession, like Edmund, on a different scale, but it's also my case, where we have to grind for 10 years and make no money for a lot of time until you get there, right? And this doesn't mean that you cannot achieve those things much, much faster. So remember that Edmund was one of the pioneers, right? He was one of the guys who were basically, participating in defining what independent game development was. There was no road that was already out there. He was creating the road. So this takes longer. This type of advice was not available back then. Now it is, and it can definitely help you expedite your path towards that, right? So this is one thing that I wanted to say. You can make it faster if you learn, right? So this is just so that you don't get discouraged that it will necessarily take like 10 years. No, you can make it faster. Also, don't feel discouraged by shiny eggshell projects. Oops. Eggshell projects, and I'll explain what that means. But You know those games that are absolutely beautiful that you are seeing screenshots on Twitter or on TigSource or whatever, and you think, oh my God, how am I going to compete with that? You know, more often than not, you see these types of games being made by random people who have never finished the game. And what you can think is they rarely get finished. So don't get discouraged by games that look fantastic, that has all this tech and all these fantastic things that seem way above your league and their league, and yet it's there because it's usually not a game, it's only screenshots, really. And don't lose your time making one of those, because it's one of, I'll probably be talking about that in details in one of my future lectures, but this is literally one of the worst places you can be in game development, trying to develop something that's way above your league that will honestly never get finished. That's how many indie studios close, actually. So this is one thing that I wanted to tell you. Also, you know you need to be humble and brave to look realistically. I'll take note of that entirely. To look realistically at where you are right now. So, your current strengths and weaknesses. You need to be brave to do that, because it's so much easier to just ignore all of this and try to go straight to the biggest possible game ever. And you need to be brave and humble to accept that maybe you're not ready for that size of of a project yet, and it's okay, right? So this is important. Focus on the next big ability milestone. So I already teased that one before. Here it is in more details. So here is like a suggestion for you. This is the very first milestone. If you're thinking about making games, you're not making games yet, just get started. Just start anything at all. Just go there and do it. For Christ's sake, just do it. Just do something. Just open the, I don't know, Unity, Multimedia Fusion, which I highly like and recommend, Construct, whatever, but just get started. If you're not there yet, this is the next milestone for you. Then work on it consistently. That's the next milestone. Maybe you get started, but then months go by before you're touching that thing again. If you find a way to consistently be putting time into game development, that is a win in and of itself. This is a good milestone for success, right? So once again, success is what you define as a goal, and then you reach that. So this is a good milestone for success that you can have. Just work on things consistently. Next is finish and ship. Just finish and ship. Uh, Not only start things, but actually become a master of finishing things and showing it like the finished product to someone. So if you don't know how to get started on that, here is my personal recommendation. Not sure if the site is online. Yes, it is. So Ludundari, just participate in this thing. It's great. It's awesome. It's how I made some of my games. It's how I developed part of my skills at conceiving something realistically, working on that thing, polishing it, delivering it to real people, using that feedback to get better and better and better, right? So finishing and shipping is a great next milestone if you haven't been able to do that. And by the way, you don't want to skip steps, right? So let's move forward and then I'll comment on that. Then try to earn your first cents from a game. That's a pretty cool thing. So you'll be making some sort of games. Maybe can you charge for them, even if it's very, very cheap? Maybe you can sell something within the game. Maybe it's too complex or maybe you can find a client that will pay, I don't know, $1,000 for you to develop a game for his small company. I don't know, but this is a good way. Just 1 cent. It doesn't have need to be $1,000. Just try to make any money at all, just so that you start getting acquainted with that aspect of game development, right? So try to earn your first cents. Then, finish good games and ship. So it's not only finishing and shipping, but actually making sure those games are good. Now, I would recommend that you learn finishing games before you learn how to make good games. If you have to ship a kind of crappy game, on a game jam, it's fine. It's okay, right? But, the problem with trying to go for the good before you even know how to finish is that you will necessarily end up stuck in a perfectionism cycle, because you think that the solution to make your game better is by, doing this one more thing, and then this other thing, and then this other thing, and then trying to reduce something that's broken and all that. Just learning to fix your mentality towards finishing games, not making them good necessarily, but finishing them, is a huge milestone. And then when it's time to finish good games, it's always in the context of also finishing those good games, not creating one of those huge unfinishable projects that in theory one day will be good, but you know in your heart of hearts, because you are playing it every day, you know that the thing that you have right now is not good. And then you open Steam, you see the next indie hit, and you are astonished by how simple it is, and you feel like, okay, everybody could make that game, anybody could have done it. Well, but you haven't. You haven't. The guy who's rich now has. You have not. You are stuck in your unfinishable game, right? So learn to finish the thing first, and then afterwards try to finish good games and ship. But it's like a staircase. You need to tackle the milestones in an order that makes sense, right? So from the bottom of my heart, I know we can be like stuck in a project and don't want to let go of that, but learn to finish first. Finish small games. You don't have to cancel your current project if you don't want to. Just put it on a drawer temporarily. Come back to it maybe in 6 months from now. But learn to finish games. This comes before. You cannot unlock that skill before unlocking this one. Finish that. Finish games first. Then ideally try to get acquainted with the aspect of making money off them, even if it's only 1 cent. But having that logistic happening, and then learn to finish good games, because this will be informed by what you learn here, and this will be informed by what you learn here, and so on and so forth. And then try to reach sustainability. So if you're already making games, they're already good, you're already finishing them and selling them, now try to make more money from them, right? You should only be worrying about that if you have managed to reach those things that I said before, right? And then finally, earn more than X. X is a number that you will have to come up with. Maybe it's what you make right now in your full-time job. Maybe it's $1 million. Maybe it's $10 million. I don't know what is a good goal for you. But this is really the sequence, right? So have a realistic understanding of where you are right now. This is a good way to figure that out. Which number are you? Okay. Now, okay, let's do a quick challenge here. Come to prointhedev.com/guide. Follow me on Instagram and send, either send in your feed a message or a photo or something saying in which step you are, and tag me and I'll answer back to you, or send me a direct message and ask any question about that. Just tell me where you are, in which milestone you are stuck right now. Have you even got started yet? Are you working consistently? Do you manage to finish things? Are your games good? And if you have any doubts about that, just go there, send me a direct message, or tag me, and I'll be very, very happy to help you answer that. If you're watching this in a moment where this is still feasible for me to do in terms of volume, okay? But this is the challenge for now. Focus on the next big milestone, okay? Number 3, and I'll try to go faster on this because I am approaching lunchtime and I'm really hungry. Okay, so how am I doing this? This is bold and big. Stop blaming the market, luck, or anything else you don't control, right? And once again, let's recap. We are talking here about the 7 pillars for being a successful game developer. In order for you to be successful, you need to start, taking ownership of the variables. Stop blaming the markets. Stop saying it's because of something you don't have control, and focus on the things that you can control. Because if it was impossible to make this work, nobody would be doing. And yet, there we are making it. Meeting, making money, and having being friends with one another, and being at conferences, and talking about our games, and having real players playing our things, and saying they cried at the end, and complimenting us and thanking us. If it was not possible, nobody would have it. And yet here we are, right? So it is possible. Now you do have to take a step back, and one of the things to do that successfully is stop blaming the market or luck or anything, and take control of things, right? So people talk about, maybe you have seen this, the market is saturated, right? Or in the apocalypse, which was a pretty good discussion a few years ago, by the way. But nowadays, people are using that as an excuse as well. So they say it's saturated. They blame the indie apocalypse because there's just too many indies making games. It's uh, too much competition, no visibility. Players don't like good games. They like crappy games. Can you realize the level of bullshit in this? Honestly, players don't like good games, they like crappy games. That means that what is a good game, and the player who's supposed to give their money to play the thing and spend their time doing the thing, they don't know what's good for them. You do, right? So this is complete absurdity. This is total bullshit. Don't be the person that thinks like that acts like that, because honestly, it will get you absolutely nowhere. This is excuses because you are not brave enough to look at where you are, what you need to develop, what you need to improve, so that you get the results that you want, right? It's not anybody else's fault, because if it is, it's a problem for you, right? If it's somebody else's fault, then you cannot do anything about that. What I'm telling you is take ownership. Take ownership for all the variables that affect what you're trying to do. If the market has certain demands, learn to read those demands. Learn to embed them in your games. And guess what? People will always get inspired by, I don't know, the games that made them want to be game developers to start with, right? So maybe it's Zelda, I don't know, Final Fantasy. It's a big one. All of these games that we have all these powerful memories about, right? For me and my business partner, one of them is Mario RPG. We absolutely love that game. Uh, Diablo, I don't know, Doom, I don't care which one, but we usually got started because we wanted to make like one game like those that inspired us when we were, I don't know, young. And guess what? All of those games, all of those great games that inspired you, they were the fruit of a commercial, professional process, right? So they were not the fruit of, like, usually, I don't know, there may be a few exceptions, but don't use exceptions as the rule, because that's what stupid people do, right? The rule is most of the games that inspired everyone who's here watching this today, and me also, and all of these people that I have talked about, are commercial games, almost always, right? So there's nothing wrong with thinking about those things and considering them, okay? So indie games nowadays are a commodity. Oops. Commodity. What does that mean? I'll even take note of that. Lots of competitors, little differentiation, right? People say, oh, the indie market has this, and that problem, as if, indie games were the first market ever. Like the first industry that ever existed was indie games, right? Every industry, when people start making money doing something, there will be more people who will be attracted to that for all sorts of different reasons. There will be an arms race for making the best games, for making it as cheaply as possible. commoditization, things turning into a commodity, is something that happens to every market, will happen to every market. Maybe, okay, this is a broad statement. You would have to look at futuristic stuff to agree with that, but it's not my point here to say if it's every market will be like that or not. This is just a provocation. But what I want to say is, we are not, as independent game developers, we are not definitely the first people on earth to have to deal with these problems, right? So years and years of management school, of marketing school, like the one that I went to, have been studying this phenomena. And it's just something that happens. So learn to compete within those parameters, right? Commodity means that you need to. So a few practical tips here. Optimize your production costs, right? In our case, it's dev time. How oops, how much, how long does it take for you to finish a game? Optimize that. Have a good value proposition with some sort twist or uniqueness. And people, sometimes go overboard with this and try to make the most unique thing ever, end up alienating their audience. Nobody understands what their game is about, so they don't buy it. They all find it interesting, but nobody buys, right? It's some level of twist, some level of uniqueness that will have people hooked into trying your thing instead of the other similar things that they would have access, right? But this is, just a commoditized. How do you say that in English? Well, a commodities market. That's all it is. And find your audience, or find where your audience is, so that you can promote your valuable proposition to them, right? And I also want to say that when people say it's saturated, there's too many games, most games are bad. Putting it bluntly, most games are really, really bad. Great indie games, well done indie games that are properly scoped, that are polished, that are well delivered, that are focused on what's valuable to players, those are not a commodity yet. One day they will be. Right now they are not, right? So I'll even type this here. Great games are not a commodity yet, right? So if one of my dev heroes who makes the games that I absolutely love to play make one game, and on the next day another one launches another game that's also very high quality, I'll buy both, right? So if Nintendo launches the next The Legend of Zelda today, and Bethesda launches the next Elder Scrolls tomorrow, I'll find the money to buy both, right? So it's not really competing. Now, what I can tell you is that if those were kind of so-so games, maybe I would buy one or the other and give it a shot. But great games are not a commodity. So if you learn to make something that's really valuable to players, you are not playing the commodity game, right? So now, okay, here is another thing that you need to be realistic about. Most games don't fail because of the market. So you don't want to be that person, right? And now I'm pretty sure the weak will leave. The weak people will leave this thing right now, because they will not withstand what the truth is. The truth is, most games fail because they are never finished. You know, but maybe on Steam there's games that are there, they are finished, they are failing. Yeah, but for one game that's on Steam and failed, there's like 10 games or 100 games that were not even finished, right? So this is the real reason why you are failing, right? Because you're not even finishing your games. So this is reason number one. Or maybe the game sucks. The game sucks. It's not, I don't want to judge things, but it's just poorly executed. It is fine if it's your first game, if you're practicing, if you don't have an intention of this being your masterpiece. Poorly executed, like silly, very simplistic platformers that you made using like some assets from the asset store. Dude, you're not getting rich with that, right? And you can convince players to find value in something that honestly is not super valuable, right? Just acknowledge where you are and work focusedly on getting on the next milestone, right? But game sucking is actually far more common than the market being overcrowded as a reason for failure, or the game isn't attractive to anyone. So it's technically okay. So it's not that it sucks, but it has serious market fit problems, right? So that's one of the examples that I just gave. Everybody thinks the game looks good, it looks interesting, it has some interesting twists, but it's not really for me, right? It's for someone else, and everybody thinks it's for someone else. Only the developer knows that he has sold like 5 units, because nobody thinks the game is for them, right? So some well executed games, technically well executed games, can have that problem. No market fit. This hasn't been considered, or hasn't, they have failed in delivering considering that, right? Or sometimes the game is not promoted, not well promoted, not decently promoted. If the game is inherently attractive and it's well executed, you can even do a so-so promotion. The game will often find its own way of finding the users, right? Or sometimes the game is finished, it's great, it has no attractivity, blind spots, right? It has great market fit, it's well promoted, but the market is saturated, right? So this is the last reason, really. If your game is finished, it doesn't suck, it is attractive, it has good market fit, and it's delivered in an attractive way to those people, and it's well promoted, and even then it has no blind spots, and even then it's not selling enough for the time that you have put into it, then you can blame the market, right? But if you're in any of those other, I'm not talking about you specifically, but it's because you see this speech so much on the internet. People blaming everyone but themselves on why the game doesn't sell, right? Stop blaming the market, luck, or anything else you don't control. Instead, understand where you are and work to make progress, right? And I'll try to expedite this thing. Next thing is engineer market fit instead of hoping for it, right? So this is also a big one. And at which count are we? We are at number 4. I'll try to move faster. So some few tips here. Don't go too focused nor too narrow. No. Uh, Too focused means only one person on earth will like your game, so specific it is, and that person is you. And too narrow, or actually, I think it's wrong, right? Too broad, actually. And too broad means like it's meant for everyone, so it's super generic. It has no twist at all. And honestly, you know, market fit is basically this: figure out what is the size of your audience, what they want, and try to do something that will be valuable for them, right? Also, don't go, I shouldn't even have to say that, but it's, don't go random, in terms of market. Will it fit the market or not? You go random when which is what happens when you don't think about it. Then maybe your game will be attractive to someone, maybe it won't. But if you're not thinking about it, you're basically leaving it to luck. So don't flip a coin on that. Instead, think in terms of engineer attractiveness. And finally, this is the point where I'll pitch the next Pro in the Dev Live talks here a bit. If you don't know it, learn it, take control, be responsible for it. And the good news is that Pro in the Dev will help you with that. Okay, so PID Live, Pro in the Dev Live will cover that a lot, because this is super important. I recognize that. I had the benefit of going to marketing school, so I understand those things. I know it's not everybody's case, so I'll be giving like specific lectures on that. Also, beware of invisible Scope. So many people will just like think in terms of the napkin. I even have like a photo here to show you. So people will estimate how big their game is. You know, what is a big game? What is a small game? Where should I be aiming? And then they will do some sort of math like this, napkin math. But instead of these things that are here, they will be like, okay, I need 4 characters. I'll need 5 days to draw each one, maybe 2 days to code each one, and more 7 enemies. And then you do like some napkin math, and you figure out that the game that you are thinking about executing, it will take you like 4 months. And 4 months is okay, right? It's pretty decent in terms of scope. However, you need to understand what is invisible scope, which is not what's written here. So invisible scope is everything that doesn't appear on the napkin because you don't know about it, right? So this is one of the reasons to be conservative in terms of scoping when talking about scoping, because you don't know what you don't know, right? But anything you never done before will necessarily present layers of complexity that you don't know about, and so it will not be in your napkin, right? So some specific examples: project size. A game that you develop over the course of 4 months is inherently different from a game that takes 2 years to finish. Inherently, it's not one is like the other but 2 times bigger or 3 times bigger. It's There's fundamental differences in how you organize the logistics, the content, the code, the design process, the shipping process. So when just by making a game that's bigger than your previous one, you're already taking some level of risk, right? So it's fine. You should take some level of risk, but no, several risks in different areas can compound and lead to an unfinishable project, or one that will need so much sacrifice in quality that you end up not being really good, right? So project size is one of those things. Technology, if you have been working, I don't know, on Unity for several years and now you are moving to Unreal Engine, don't underestimate the cost of changing for a new technology, because there's stuff to learn, there's things that work differently. And once again, if you're making a game that's very similar in terms of genre, scope, size, team, it's very similar to something you have already done, and all you are doing is working on a different engine, maybe that's okay, right? You can tackle that. You should impose yourself some degree, you should put yourself in the fire a little bit so that you can grow, right? Go over your current borders. It's fine. Push yourself, but be deliberate about where you are doing that. So technology, don't underestimate. Oh, I'm making this game. It's very innovative. It's very different from everything I ever did, and I'm also using a different engine. Those risks compound, right? So it will not show up on your napkin because you have never done that. In 1 year after you have started, you look back and say, oh, okay, I should have put that in the napkin, but it was not. So you lost 1 year, right? So be aware of that. Pay attention to that. Beware of invisible scope. Genre. So game genre. Have you ever worked on something in that genre before? Design innovation. This is one that people try to come up with new designs. They never have even like finished the game on an existing design before. Like, you have not worked on a game like Diablo, but you're trying to make the next Diablo with all sorts of interesting innovations and stuff. You can do that. Maybe if you have worked on a big game before on that engine, that size of project, you have finished the thing, you have sold the thing, and now you're just tweaking innovation on some key areas. That's fine, right? Just don't try to do everything at the same time. But any innovation, you know, any innovation at all, or really anything that's new to you presents that not being on your napkin risk, right? So this is invisible scope. Your game will be those 4 months that you calculated on your napkin plus all the invisible scope that there is. So be conscious about that. Be aware of the sources of invisible scope that exist in your project. And once again, if this is like too abstract, you cannot see how this connects directly to your current project right now, it's okay. Just make sure to be here on the next live streams, because I will be talking about that in a whole lot of details and helping you scope properly, right? But I just wanted to leave this tip out here. Okay, number 6. Be assertive. Oops. Be assertive and efficient with development. Okay, so this is one of those things. It's not only like making progress, but making progress efficiently and quickly. This is one of the pillars for being successful in tackling game development as a profession, right? So what does that mean? Assertive. What does assertive mean? Is uh, minimize backtrack as much as possible and redundant iteration. So I have a picture here from one of my paid trainings where I drew this just to show. So this is how it can go, where you are like iterating a lot and changing direction of your game a lot by changing design. Then something doesn't work, then you change it again, then you change the graphic style, and then you start here and you end up here, right? And something slightly different is this one, right? You do have to iterate, you do have to maneuver, but you are also doing this pragmatically and in an assertive manner, so that even if you have to maneuver, you are doing more of a straight line, and you are starting in the same place here and you're ending in the same place here, right? So being assertive means trying to go a little bit more in a straight line as much as possible, at least, right? So minimize backtrack and redundant iteration. Once again, the next lessons will talk about that in details. And efficient means be really lean with what is required with your design, with your game, with the vision that you are trying to achieve for your game. We're talking about design and production here. So be really lean, minimalistic with what is really required and set in stone, because then so that you can find powerful leverages. So just a quick example, production hacks. Unfortunately, I won't have time to go through those today, but production hacks, those are things, they're high leverage things, right? So you do I have this here anywhere? This is production hacks. They're like this. You do X, you get 10x in return. So for example, if you don't have to hand draw all your enemies, you can like just change colors. For some games that will not work, for others it will, right? So make sure you understand where is important for you to not give up on scope, so that you can use some opportunities to hack your way into finishing the game, because you need to be assertive, right? So this is efficiency. And by the way, if you think this is hacking in a bad sense, think that Diablo, for example, has lots and lots and lots of enemies that have exactly the same behavior, sometimes even the same graphics with changed colors, and you are having a lot of fun while playing that, right? So it's not all about it's not all about you don't need to be suffering for this to work, right? All right, so be assertive and efficient with development. Make sure to use some production hacks and be here for the next lectures, because in one of them I'll be talking more specifically about some of these specific tricks, right? So this Diablo thing is just one example, but you should be looking and trying to find opportunities to be efficient and assertive in all areas of your development, right? Because one of the things is you always challenging yourself to make, deliver more value in the same amount of time. So maybe you are not like super attractive to the idea of, instead of taking 2 years to finish a game, try to finish that in 1 year. But maybe you can think in terms of, okay, you have 1 year of development and you'll be able to deliver, I don't know, 12x value in those 12 months, or maybe you'll be able to deliver 24x value in those same 12 months, right? So being assertive and efficient also makes sure that you are spending your time, even if you don't change the duration of your project, but on the things that will matter the most for players, right? And I kind of messed it here with my camera, but I think I'm back on the camera, right? Yes, I am. Okay. All right. So also finally, number 7, and we are almost done. But there's an important thing at the end. So uh, I would suggest very strongly that you get into a virtuals. Let me make this a little bit bigger and bold. We are big and bold, folks. Into a virtual cycle, oops, of learning and executing. Learn what's going on. Learn, then execute. Then learn, then execute more. Then learn more, and so on and so forth. So what I want to encourage you to do is, absolutely don't skip the step of executing. If you're just like watching this live presentation, or this actually pre-recorded presentation, or one of my live ones, and then watching other ones, and then reading books about it, but you're never like going there and just getting your feet wet, just jumping in the swimming pool and start swimming, you are not getting anything done, right? So this is just a very bad way of procrastinating. Honestly, just reading about this, you should as well just go play a game, because it would be more fun than watching me talk, right? So don't procrastinate. Make sure that you execute. Don't skip the step of executing, because that's what will have you making progress, right? And also, don't skip the step of learning, because otherwise you'll be bouncing, you basically bouncing your head against the wall, like doing something that you could be not doing wrong for lack of knowledge, right? If I have done a mistake before, if I have fallen on a landmine in development, you don't have to, right? Learn from other people. It doesn't even, if you don't like my face, you don't like my voice, you don't like my method, whatever, learn from someone else. It's not a problem, but make sure you are always nurturing your brain, your mental model of how to be effective in game development, right? In terms of reaching an audience, in terms of making something that's attractive, in terms of delivering real value to players so that other people think your game is great, not only you, not only your idea is great, but your actual game is awesome as well. So learn how to do that. Learn from people. Try to take some shortcuts, because honestly, there's no real shortcut to this thing, but you can take like 10 years, like I did, like many people did, or you can take like 1 year or less or more. I don't know. But you want to take the shortest route that is real, that is realistic, but that takes to that place, right? So always be learning, always be executing, right? So I do have some really important things that I want you to know. So let me take note of that. Final things for today. Oops. Final things for today. So, first thing I want to say is next week I will be here again, probably talking about tricks to help anyone make an appealing game, right? So many programmers, or many people who are not programmers, they're like, okay, how am I going to make a game that can be competitive and attractive and interesting to anyone if I'm not a programmer? Like, I'm not a real programmer, so how am I going to do the gameplay, the code, and all that? I'm powerless, right? And other people who maybe they are programmers or maybe they aren't, but they definitely don't have a background in art, they'll be like, okay, how can I make a game that's appealing if my art is horrible? And you know what? There are many, many tricks, both for non-programmers to make great games and for non-artists to make great-looking games, right? It's possible. And these are just two things. Just two things. If you feel like you don't have the ability, probably there's a problem. Probably there's a problem in how you are seeing the thing that you're trying to develop, right? So it's maybe a changing mindset that will help you see the path for you to develop like a super attractive game. So I know some people will be right there and thinking, okay, Maybe this is possible for other people because they have all these talents. They have, Gabriel has been working on these things for 26 years and he's also doing art and all that. Or maybe he's working with someone super talented like his business partner who is a great programmer, or he has all these opportunities, But depending on how you structure your work, you see that actually I don't have all that. I'm always in awe and admiration for artists that are so much better than I am, and programmers that are so much better than I am. And yet I'm capable of doing something that is attractive, that's interesting, that makes people cry, enjoy, that makes people really happy and share with their friends. I'm capable of doing that with my skills. They are not perfect. They are not like the best available. There are so many better people out there, right? And yet I'm capable of doing that. So how do you start, leveraging on certain tricks? Some of these things are mindsets. Some of these things are actual, methods, so that you can produce super attractive, super appealing games regardless of your current skill set. So which are some tricks that are available to, depending on which kinds of areas you have to cover, right? So I'll be talking probably about that in the next week. If not on the next episode, in one of the next, I'll definitely be covering that. So stay tuned. And also, if you have enjoyed and if you have found useful this thing, I want to ask you to do 2 tasks. And if you leave this video right now, I'll be really pissed off, right? So I want you to be here. Okay, I'm getting so pissed off that I'm actually doing all kinds of shit here. All right, so I have 2 tasks for you. First is, I want you to come here to prointhedev.com/guide, and I want you to subscribe to our social accounts, right? And then to the email notification, so that you can know, so that you can remember, because I know that you close this video and you start, other things will start like competing for your attention, and next week you forget, right? So this is why I'm not going to, be bothering you with spam or anything. This is just a notification. So when this next lecture goes live, you will receive a link for that. That's all I'll be sending, right? And on social media, because honestly I don't know exactly what I'll be doing, but part of the interaction will happen through these venues over here, right? Including the one-on-one questions and answers. So if you have any question about what I have discussed, especially today, which I'm not doing this as an actual live stream, go here on Instagram, send me a direct message, and I'll be very happy to help you. So this is one of the tasks that I have to go there and follow these links and do the things, right? Also, I need you, and okay, now you made me thinking, okay, this guy is talking to like this invisible audience. I'm hidden here, I'm watching him talk, but he doesn't know I'm here, he doesn't know I'm just a viewer on YouTube. No, I know you. You are starting to stop paying attention, you're considering what you're going to do next, and you are getting distracted, right? But I'm talking to you specifically, right? And you know it's you, right? And if you know it's you, I want you to give me a little smile. See? Are you smiling? Or are you thinking that I'm stupid? But no matter what your reaction was, I know it was you, and you know it's you. So I'm talking to you specifically. What I want you to ask you is to help me, really, because this takes a huge time to put together, because I'm reconciling this with developing my own games, and I have real customers. I have like a studio, I have a real game in development. I have other work that I do as a consultant, and it takes me time, like from my leisure time, from the time that I should be not working, and I'm still here preparing those things. And if you find this valuable, the only way to make sure that I'll keep doing this is if you spread the word, right? So I'm talking to you specifically to please come and like this video, come and subscribe to these things, come and share this link to someone that you think will find it helpful, right? So I'm honestly like counting on your generosity to make this initiative possible, right? You prove to me that this is useful by helping me increase these numbers right below this video. So increasing the subscribers, increasing the number of views, of likes, of comments. When you participate, when you take ownership of also this initiative and do what is in your power to help this initiative, you are helping making sure that it continues, right? So this is what I wanted to ask you. Help me promote this thing if you think it's been useful to you, right? That's all I'm asking. If it's a complete pile of crap, you don't need to see any of that anymore. It's fine. I will not be complaining. But if this has helped you, then please, by all means, go there. Use your outreach to help me promote this thing a little bit. Okay. So I think that's what I had for today. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your trust. I do hope to see you on the next lecture and on social media. All right? Take care.